Ethan, I'm moving you out of the CTO position. Get to Brandon North. The board is promoting you to vice president. My wife, Isabella Vance, the CEO, delivered the news with the same detached tone she'd used to point out a leaf on the sidewalk, as if this were the most mundane thing in the world. Brandon immediately chimed in, his voice dripping with passive-aggressive condescension. Easy there, Ethan. Isabella just thinks you've been working too hard. Time for you to take it easy. His eyes were filled with a raw, triumphant challenge, like a bantam rooster puffing out its chest. I stood there, silently looking at the two of them. One was the woman I had shared a bed with for 3 years, the beautiful and ruthless CEO of a publicly traded tech company, Isabella Vance. The other was the so-called top-tier talent she had just brought back from overseas, the man who had been the one that got away, the one she'd been pining for 10 years, Brandon North. In the vast expanse of the CEO's office, the atmosphere was frozen solid. Isabella sat in a Herman Miller chair worth tens of thousands of dollars, her impeccably tailored Dior suit making her seem even more aloof. She didn't even look up at me, her gaze fixed on the documents in front of her as if I were just another subordinate waiting for orders. My name is Ethan Cole. On paper, I'm the chief technology officer of this multi-billion-dollar company, Vance Dynamics. Behind closed doors, I'm her husband, the man who, for her, started from nothing and spent 5 years of his life single-handedly building the company's entire technological foundation. A week ago, Isabella told me she was going to the airport to pick up an old friend. I didn't think anything of it until I saw Brandon North at the office, the same man from Isabella's old college photo albums, the one she kept hidden in the back of her study. That's when it all clicked. The one that got away. He'd actually come back. And today, the first order of business upon his return was to take everything I had bled for. Vice President. I twisted my lips into a self-deprecating smirk. VP of what? Facilities? Human resources? Isabella finally lifted her head. Those almond-shaped eyes that once captivated me now held nothing but icy distance and a flicker of impatience. Ethan, don't be childish. The company needs a professional to lead the tech team through the next phase of development. Brandon has years of project management experience in Silicon Valley. He's a better fit for this than you are. I'm not a good fit. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Isabella, have you forgotten who wrote the Phoenix project line by line? Forgotten who pulled 3 all-nighters to build the demo that convinced the VCs when we couldn't get funding? Forgotten who led the team through one technical nightmare after another to make Vance Dynamics what it is today? The Phoenix project was the core of our company, the bedrock supporting our entire commercial empire. From the foundational architecture to the core algorithms, I built it all with my own 2 hands. It's no exaggeration to say that without me, there would be no Vance Dynamics. Isabella's brow furrowed deeper. I haven't forgotten your contributions. That's why I'm promoting you to VP. Your stock options and salary will remain the same. Ethan, you need to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture? I stared at her, the warmth in my eyes slowly dying. So, my bigger picture is stepping aside to make way for the one that got away? Is that it? Beside her, Brandon snickered. He stepped forward, positioning himself deliberately close to Isabella, and placed a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of pure ownership. Come on, Ethan, don't put it like that, he said, his tone breezy. Isabella and I were classmates, and we're kindred spirits. Our understanding of technology and our vision for the company's future might just be a bit more forward-thinking than yours. Everything you've done until now has been like laying the foundation. Hard work, sure, but it's just grunt work. I'm here to build the skyscraper. He intentionally emphasized the words kindred spirits. I watched his hand on her shoulder, a searingly bright and ugly sight. And Isabella, she didn't even flinch. Her silent acceptance was the sharpest knife imaginable, and she plunged it straight into my heart. 3 years of marriage, 5 years of pouring my soul into this, and in Brandon North's eyes, it was all just laying the foundation. All my life's work was just to set the stage for someone else. I took a deep breath, forcing down the surge of rage and disappointment, and looked at Isabella, my voice eerily calm. I had one last question. Is this your final decision? Isabella avoided my gaze, her voice hard. This is a corporate decision. It's for the good of the company. Of course. I nodded slowly, enunciating each word. Ms. Vance, I'd like to tender my resignation. Isabella's head snapped up, genuine shock finally cracking her icy facade. Brandon froze too, clearly not expecting me to call their bluff so forcefully. You're resigning? Disbelief laced her voice. Ethan, where would you even go? Do you have any idea how many people are killing themselves to get a job at Vance Dynamics? Her words reeked of superiority and her unshakable need for control. In her world, everything I had was a gift from her and her company. Without that platform, I was nothing. I laughed, a hollow, tragic sound. Yeah, it's a great company. Too bad there's no room for me anymore. With that, I turned and walked toward the door. Stop, Isabella commanded. I didn't break stride. Ethan. Her voice was sharp now, a mix of anger and desperation. Don't you dare regret this. If you walk out that door today, then we are. I stopped and turned back, my gaze level and calm. We're what? My unnerving tranquility seemed to sting her. She gritted her teeth and spat the words out. We're getting a divorce. As she said it, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes, but it was instantly buried under a mask of cold authority. She thought it was her trump card, the one thing that could make me bend. After all, everyone knew how much Ethan Cole loved Isabella Vance. Brandon's face, meanwhile, was plastered with a triumphant, undisguised smirk. This was the moment he had been waiting for. But I just held her gaze, and then, slowly and clearly, I said 3 words. Fine, let's do it. The air in the room went still. The expressions on Isabella's and Brandon's faces were frozen, like a movie paused on a frame of absurd disbelief. Isabella had probably imagined 1,000 different reactions from me, begging, crying, screaming, fighting, but she never, ever imagined I would agree to a divorce so calmly, so decisively. What? What did you say? Her voice trembled, as if she couldn't trust her own ears. I walked back towards her, stopping at the edge of the massive desk, and looked down at her. For the first time, I saw the woman I had loved for 5 years through the eyes of a complete stranger. I said, fine, let's get a divorce. I repeated, my tone flat. When, where? City Hall. Just have your lawyer draw up the papers and send them to me. How do you want to split the assets? The color drained from Isabella's face. Her prized composure, her absolute control, shattered in an instant. She had always believed I loved her so deeply that I couldn't live without her, let alone without the empire she had built. That's why she felt so secure bringing Brandon back, so brazen in stripping me of everything right in front of him. She thought that by tossing me a few scraps, a meaningless VP title, I would gratefully accept my place and clear the way for her long-lost love. She miscalculated. You don't tug on a tiger's whiskers. Ethan, are you insane? She shot up from her chair, her hands braced on the desk, her body trembling with agitation. You'd throw away your entire career just to spite me. My career? I laughed. I built my career with my own 2 hands. Isabella, you seem to have one thing backward. Vance Dynamics didn't make me. I made Vance Dynamics. I didn't say it loudly, but every word landed like a sledgehammer on Isabella's heart. You. She was speechless, her chest heaving with fury. Brandon finally snapped out of his stupor. He rushed to Isabella's side, playing the part of her loyal protector, and snarled at me. Don't be an ungrateful bastard, Cole. Isabella is giving you a chance out of respect for your history. Don't push it. Without her, without the Vance family, what are you? Just some kid she picked up from nothing. I didn't waste another breath on him. I pulled out my phone and, right in front of them, called my assistant, Chloe. Chloe sent out a calendar invite. Full tech department meeting, main conference room, in 30 minutes. And one more thing, draw up a resignation letter and a divorce settlement for me. Yes, you heard me right. Chloe was clearly stunned, stammering on the other end. And Mr. Cole, what's going on? Just do it. I hung up and walked out of the office without a backward glance at the 2 of them, their faces a mixture of fury and shock. Behind me, I heard Isabella's frantic, enraged voice. Ethan, you get back here. Don't you dare. I didn't even turn around. Back in my office, it took me 10 minutes to pack my personal belongings into a cardboard box. There wasn't much. A few books, a coffee mug, and a framed photo of Isabella and me. It was from 3 years ago, when the company had just started. We were crammed into a tiny, unfinished office space. She was leaning against my chest, her smile bright and genuine. Back then, we had nothing, which meant we had everything. I stared at it for a few seconds, then expressionlessly flipped the photo face down and tossed it into the box with the rest of my files. Let the past be the past. 30 minutes later, I was in the main tech conference room. The entire department, more than 100 of our core engineers and developers, was assembled. These were my people, the team I had personally built over 5 years of brutal deadlines and shared victories. They saw me walk in holding the box, and looks of confusion and unease spread across their faces. I set the box down on the table and scanned the room, my eyes lingering on each familiar face. "Hey, everyone," I began, my voice steady and strong. "I called this meeting to make an announcement. Effective immediately, I, Ethan Cole, am officially resigning from my position as CTO of Vance Dynamics." The room erupted. "Ethan, what's happening? You're leaving. Why? Is it because of Ms. Vance?" I raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "This is my personal decision, and it has nothing to do with the company's performance. I want to thank you all for your support over the last 5 years. We've pulled all-nighters together, solved impossible problems, and celebrated our successes. I was lucky to have fought alongside every one of you. I bowed deeply to them. But all good things come to an end. From now on, the tech department will be led by the new director, Mr. North. I hope you'll all continue to do great work and create value for the company." The team exchanged uneasy glances. I could see the anger and disappointment in their eyes. The team's lead architect and my right-hand man, a grizzled veteran everyone called Pops, Riley, was the first to stand up. His voice was a low growl. "If you're leaving, Ethan, then I'm right behind you. I'm not staying at this damn company without you." He's right. Wherever you go, we go. Who's going to maintain the Phoenix project without you? That new guy doesn't know a damn thing about it. The room was on the verge of a full-blown mutiny. A wave of warmth washed over me, but I knew this wasn't the time. "Everybody sit down," I said, my voice firm. "You are employees of this company. You have a professional responsibility. Don't do anything reckless." Just then, the conference room doors burst open. Isabella and Brandon stood in the doorway, their faces dark with fury. Isabella's eyes were like daggers, fixed on me. Her voice was ice. "Ethan, what do you think you're doing? Are you trying to stage a mass walkout? Are you trying to destroy this company?" Her presence silenced the room, but the air was thick with hostility aimed directly at her. I met her gaze without fear. "Ms. Vance, I was just saying a final goodbye to my team. I don't believe that's against company policy, is it?" Brandon stepped forward, his face a mask of smug satisfaction. "Cut the act, Cole. You think you can blackmail the company by taking these people with you? Let me tell you something. The world keeps spinning no matter who leaves. Vance Dynamics will be better off without you." He then turned to the team, clearing his throat and adopting the air of a newly appointed commander. "Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon North, and as of today, I am a new director of technology. I know many of you are brought on by Ethan and are loyal to him, but I want you all to recognize the reality of the situation. I am your boss now, and I promise you, if you stay and do your jobs, your salaries and benefits will be even better than before." He thought money could buy loyalty. He didn't understand that the glue holding a team like this together was never money. It was trust and respect. Pops Riley practically spat on the floor. "We don't know any Director North. We work for Ethan." "That's right. We only work for Ethan," the room chorused in unison. The blood drained from Brandon's face, leaving it a sickly purple. Isabella's expression grew even uglier. She had never imagined my influence in the tech department ran this deep. Her absolute control, for the first time, had failed her. "Riley," she snapped, "as a department manager, you're leading this insurrection. Do you want to be fired?" Pop stuck his neck out. "Fire me, then. If I can't work here, I'll find work somewhere else." "Fine, all of you." Isabella was trembling with rage. "You all want to rebel, is that it? I'm officially announcing that anyone involved in this will have their monthly bonuses canceled. Anyone who wants to leave can go to HR and file the paperwork right now. I won't stop you." She thought her high-pressure tactics would crush the rebellion, but she was wrong. Once you've lost the people, threats are useless. Watching her lose control, the last lingering attachment I had for her evaporated into thin air. I picked up my box and walked to the door. As I passed her, I paused and said in a voice only we could hear, "Isabella, you're going to regret this." Then, without another look, I walked out of the place I had poured my life into for 5 years. Less than 10 minutes after I left, my phone started ringing off the hook. Pops, our lead front-end dev, our back-end architect. One by one, more than 30 of the department's core members called me. The message was always the same: "Ethan, we quit. We're with you." I stood on the street below the towering Advanced Dynamics building and looked up, the sun glaring in my eyes. I smiled as I spoke into the phone. "Good. Wait for my call." "Isabella, Brandon, did you really think that by taking my title, you could take everything from me? You were so naive." The show was just getting started. After leaving the company, the first thing I did wasn't look for a job or a lawyer. It was to go back to the home I share with Isabella, a top-floor duplex in one of the city's most exclusive high-rises, with a panoramic view of the Sound. Both our names were on the deed, but Isabella had paid for most of it. It was another one of her methods of control, a constant material reminder of the gap between us. I let myself in. The scent of her, the expensive perfume she always wore, still hung in the air. The designer heels she'd worn yesterday were by the door. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, yet it felt completely different. Without a moment's hesitation, I went to my study and opened my personal safe. There was no cash or jewelry inside, only a thick stack of file folders. I pulled one out, its label written in English: Phoenix Project Core Patents. Inside was the complete history of the Phoenix Project, from its conception to its execution, the original architectural diagrams, the full source code for its core algorithms, and over 30 patent certificates for its key technologies, filed with both the USPTO in the United States and the EPO in Europe. And the holder of all these patents had only one name: Ethan Cole. The filing dates on every single one of them predated my relationship with Isabella and the founding of Advanced Dynamics. This was my ace in the hole, my final fallback. When Isabella and I started the company, she handled fundraising and marketing, and I handled the tech. I loved her, so I gave her the Phoenix Project, then just a fledgling idea, without reservation, allowing it to become the heart of Advanced Dynamics. We signed a technology licensing agreement. I granted Advanced Dynamics exclusive, permanent, royalty-free use of the Phoenix Project. But there was a clause in that agreement, one that seemed utterly insignificant at the time. Should the licensor, Ethan Cole, be involuntarily separated from the company for reasons not of his own making, or should the marriage between the licensor and the legal representative of the licensee, Isabella Vance, be dissolved, this licensing agreement is rendered immediately null and void. Back then, Isabella was consumed by the thrill of the startup and her love for me. She signed it without a second glance. She never dreamed we would end up here. And that clause, written to protect our love, had now become my sharpest weapon. From the moment I resigned and agreed to the divorce, any use of the Phoenix Project by Advanced Dynamics was illegal. It was patent infringement. I carefully placed the files in my briefcase and began to pack. My clothes, my laptop, some technical books. I didn't have much. It all fit into a single large suitcase. Finally, I went into the master bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer. A velvet box sat inside. I opened it. A diamond ring I had been saving for months was nestled within. I had planned to give it to her on our 3rd anniversary next month. What a bitter irony. I took the ring, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, and looked out at the glittering cityscape. With a flick of my wrist, the ring, a symbol of all my past foolishness, traced a small arc in the air and vanished into the vast darkness. Goodbye, Isabella, and goodbye to 5 wasted years. I wheeled my suitcase out the door and didn't look back. The next morning, all hell broke loose at Advanced Dynamics. More than 30 core members of the tech department had resigned en masse, including the heads and senior engineers from every critical division: front-end, back-end, algorithms, testing, and operations. I had effectively gutted the entire department. It was an earthquake of the highest magnitude. Without these people, even the daily maintenance of the Phoenix Project was now in question, to say nothing of future updates or development. Brandon North, the brand new CTO, was suddenly a general without an army. He thought his Silicon Valley resume and Isabella's backing would be enough to command the ship. He quickly discovered he couldn't even find the system's back-end login credentials. The entire Phoenix project, from server architecture and database encryption to its deployment protocols, was a fortress I had built myself, filled with countless backdoors and verification mechanisms known only to me and my core team. Forget Brandon North. You could bring in the world's best hackers, and they wouldn't be able to touch a single line of code without my permission. I heard Brandon was tearing his office apart, screaming at the few remaining interns and demanding they hand over administrative passwords. But what did they know? They were terrified. Isabella was in full-blown crisis mode. Within hours, the company's stock began to show signs of instability. The market is ruthlessly perceptive. A CTO leaving with his entire core team is a 5-alarm fire, a catastrophic signal to investors. If the news went public, the consequences would be unimaginable. Isabella called in every favor she had to temporarily suppress the story, but she knew it was a ticking time bomb. She started blowing up my phone with calls and texts. At first, her tone was commanding. "Ethan, what the hell do you think you're doing? Get back here right now. You're holding the company hostage. Can you even begin to take responsibility if it all collapses?" When I didn't respond, her tone softened. "Ethan, we were married. Let's not do this. Please come back. We can talk this out. I know you're hurt, and I was wrong. Whatever you want, just name it. I'll give it to you." Finally, she was just begging. "My love, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please come back. The company needs you. I'll handle Brandon. I'll get rid of him. You can come back, and everything will be like it was before. Please." I stared at the messages popping up on my screen and felt nothing but a cold, detached amusement. Too little, too late. There are no do-overs in life. I didn't reply to a single message. Around noon, I received an unexpected call. It was from Isabella's father, the chairman of the Vance corporate empire, Richard Vance, a living legend in the business world. He had been vehemently against our marriage from the start, believing a kid from a no-name background like me was unworthy of his precious daughter. But Isabella had insisted, and he eventually relented, though his attitude toward me over the past 3 years had been consistently lukewarm. "Ethan," his voice was deep and authoritative, but laced with a hint of weariness. "Mr. Vance, it's me," I answered calmly. "I heard about what's happening at Vance Dynamics," he said, getting straight to the point. "Where are you? We need to meet." I met Richard Vance at a private, members-only club downtown. In a quiet, wood-paneled room, the rich aroma of old leather hung in the air. Richard, dressed in a sharp, bespoke suit, looked every bit the patriarch. Though he was in his 60s, his eyes were still sharp, his posture impeccable. He personally poured me a glass of what looked like Pappy Van Winkle from a decanter on the table. "Try it," he said, aged 23 years. I took the glass, swirled the amber liquid, and took a small sip. It was smooth, complex, and warming. "Excellent." Richard watched me, his expression unreadable. "Ethan, I always took you for a steady, dependable young man. I never imagined you had this kind of ruthlessness in you." I set the glass down. "Even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. I'm no rabbit." He sighed. Isabella was incredibly reckless. "I've met that Brandon North. He's all talk, a slick salesman who can't deliver." She was fooled by him. She wasn't fooled. She was willing. I corrected him, cutting through the pretense. "Mr. Vance, if you asked me here today to plead her case, then we can end this conversation right now." His eyes flickered, surprised by my directness. "Don't be so hasty, son," he said, taking a sip of his own drink. "I know you're angry, so let's make a deal. I'll make Isabella fire Brandon North immediately. You come back to the company, same position, same authority, and I will have the board issue you an additional 5% of the company's stock. Consider it an apology from the Vance family." 5%. At Vance Dynamics' current valuation, that was worth over $500 million. The old fox knew what he was doing. It was an offer most people couldn't refuse. But I wasn't most people. I looked at him and smiled. "Mr. Vance, do you really think I did all this for money?" He frowned. "Then what is it for?" "For respect. For a reckoning," I said, my voice low and hard. "Isabella can stop loving me. She can divorce me. But what she can't do is enjoy the fruits of my labor while kicking me to the curb without a second thought, only to hand over my life's work to another man. She showed me no mercy. I will show her none." Richard's face hardened. He had spent decades in a world where everything had a price, where any problem could be solved with the right amount of money. He never considered that I wasn't asking for money. "Ethan, it's always wise to leave yourself an exit," he said, his voice turning cold. "Don't forget, you and Isabella are still legally married. What you're doing could be considered malicious destruction of marital assets. If this goes to court, it won't end well for you." He was threatening me. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the folder, and slid it across the table. "Before we talk about the law, Mr. Vance, maybe you should take a look at this." He opened the folder with a suspicious frown. As his eyes fell upon the stacks of patent certificates, each embossed with the official seals of the USPTO and EPO, the color drained from his weathered face. For the first time, I saw genuine shock in his eyes. His hand trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages, his complexion growing paler with each one. He was a brilliant businessman. He understood immediately what those patents meant. They meant that the intellectual property for the Phoenix Project, all of it, belonged to me, Ethan Cole, and me alone. It had nothing to do with Vance Dynamics. In Vance Dynamics, the multi-billion-dollar public company had built its entire business, every single product, on top of the Phoenix Project. Without it, Vance Dynamics was a castle built on sand, ready to collapse at the slightest push. How is this possible? Richard's voice was hoarse. "When did you file for these?" "Before I ever met your daughter," I replied coolly. His head shot up. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. He finally understood. I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I wasn't being emotional. I had the power to burn his daughter's empire to the ground. "What? What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I leaned forward, locking his gaze, and said each word with chilling clarity. "I want Isabella to walk away with nothing." No, that wasn't quite right. I want a divorce. The asset division is simple. I don't want a single penny of our marital property. The penthouse, the cars, the bank accounts, it's all hers. I'll be the one to walk away with nothing. Richard stared, utterly baffled. He couldn't comprehend my terms. No money, just a divorce. It defied all logic. Seeing the confusion in his eyes, I continued. "However, I have two other conditions. First, I want Isabella, on behalf of Vance Dynamics, to publish a full-page apology in the top 3 financial news publications. Think the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg. It will run for 3 consecutive days. An apology to me and to all the engineers she forced out for her catastrophic decision to undermine her own team. Second, I want her to personally hold a press conference and explain to her investors and the public that the company's core technology does not, in fact, belong to the company, but to me. And she will announce that, due to her gross personal misconduct, the company has lost its legal right to use the Phoenix Project." Richard's face was now a mask of pure horror. He looked at me as if I were a madman. "Are you insane?" he roared, losing his composure. "Do you have any idea what that would do? The stock will be wiped out. The company will be destroyed. Isabella's reputation will be ruined forever." "I know." I calmly picked up my glass, observing the rich color of the scotch. "I want her to tear down everything she's so proud of with her own 2 hands. I want her to know what it feels like to fall from the heavens and hit rock bottom." You're trying to destroy her. This is pure revenge," he sputtered, trembling with rage. "It is revenge," I admitted without shame. "Mr. Vance, this is excellent scotch. Enjoy it. My terms are on the table. You have 3 days. If I don't see the results I'm looking for by then, my lawyers will be delivering infringement notices not only to Vance Dynamics, but to the international courts in the U.S. and Europe." With that, I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked out of the room. I left him there with a choice he couldn't win in a room filled with suffocating silence. I had underestimated Isabella's pride and overestimated Richard's decisiveness. They didn't accept my terms. Perhaps they thought I was bluffing, or maybe they were desperately searching for a way out of the corner I had painted them into. That afternoon, Isabella had headhunters scouring the market, offering double, even triple the going rate in a frantic attempt to rebuild her tech team. Brandon North, meanwhile, swore to her that if she gave him 1 month, he could build a new system, something even better than the Phoenix Project. And Isabella believed him. Or rather, She chose to believe in fantasy rather than humble herself and admit she was wrong. She even sent out a company-wide memo, denouncing me as a traitor who had manipulated my colleagues for personal gain. She declared that any employee who had left with me would be blacklisted from the industry and never be rehired by Vance Dynamics. It was a vicious, vindictive move. Panic began to set in among my former colleagues. My phone rang with worried calls asking what we were going to do. I told them to sit tight, relax for a few days, and trust me. After hanging up, I immediately began the process of registering a new company. I already had the name picked out, Phoenix Innovations. From the ashes, a rebirth. For the office space, I leased a floor in the building directly across the street from Vance Dynamics. I wanted them to have a clear view of my return. While I was drowning in incorporation paperwork, an unexpected development accelerated everything. Brandon North. He had somehow got my number and asked to meet at a high-end lounge. I was going to ignore him, but then he sent a text. Don't you want to know why Isabella suddenly agreed to go out with you 3 years ago? The message was a splinter under my skin. I had to admit, he had me. The start of my relationship with Isabella had been abrupt. I had pursued her for 6 months, and she'd always kept me at arm's length. Then one day, completely out of the blue, she found me and said she wanted to be my girlfriend. I was so overjoyed at the time that I never questioned it. Now, it seemed there was more to the story. I decided to meet him. In the club's plush VIP room, Brandon was lounging on a sofa alone, a ridiculously expensive bottle of Ace of Spades on the table. He flashed a smug grin as I walked in and poured me a glass. There you are. Have a seat. I remained standing, ignoring the drink. Get to the point. I don't have time to waste with you. He wasn't fazed. He leaned back, swirling his champagne flute. You know, Ethan, I almost feel sorry for you. You thought you married the woman of your dreams, but in reality, you were just the rebound. A placeholder. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Brandon savored the pained look on my face, clearly enjoying the power trip. 3 years ago, I had to leave the country because of a family emergency. Before I left, I told Isabella that when I came back, I was going to marry her. I didn't realize I'd be gone for 2 years. By the time I got things sorted and tried to get in touch, I found out she was already married. To you. He took a sip of champagne. Did you know she never loved you? The only reason she chose you was because of your name. Ethan. She told me that every time she said Ethan, it felt like she was saying my name, Brandon. She was looking at you, but she was thinking of me. Boom. My world went silent. So that's what it was. I was nothing more than a ridiculous stand-in. My 5 years of devotion, our 3 years of marriage. It was all just a shadow play she performed for herself to pass the time. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. Seeing my anguish, Brandon's grin widened. So here's my advice. Be smart about this. Hand over the Phoenix Project source code and all the credentials. I'll talk to Isabella, get her to give you a nice severance package, and you can disappear quietly. Otherwise, his expression turned ugly. Otherwise, I have no problem destroying your reputation completely. I stared at him, the rage building inside me threatening to burn away the last of my self-control. But I held it back. Slowly, deliberately, I let a smile spread across my face. It was a smile utterly devoid of warmth. Brandon, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Thank you for telling me this. Oh, he raised an eyebrow, thinking I was folding. Finally seeing reason. Yeah, I am, I said, my smile growing wider. I was going to leave Isabella with a shred of dignity. But now, I see there's no need for that at all. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a digital voice recorder, and pressed play. Brandon's smug voice filled the silent room. You thought you married the woman of your dreams, but in reality, you were just a rebound. A placeholder. She never loved you. The only reason she chose you was because of your name. Ethan. The color drained from Brandon's face, his arrogance instantly replaced by panic. You recorded me. He lunged forward, tried to grab the recorder. I stepped back, pocketing the device, my eyes cold as steel. Brandon, you and your precious Isabella should get ready. I'm about to send you a gift. I turned and walked out, leaving him standing amidst the wreckage of his own making, the sound of his furious roar and a shattering champagne bottle echoing behind me. I didn't release the recording right away. That was a card to be played at the most critical moment for maximum impact. The third day came and went. There was complete silence from Isabella and Vance Dynamics. No apology. No press conference. They had chosen the most foolish path possible. Defiance. Fine. You were offered a way out, and you chose the path to ruin. I didn't hesitate. I called my legal team. It's time. Within 30 minutes, a cease and desist letter from one of the nation's top law firms was delivered to the legal department at Vance Dynamics. The contents were simple but devastating. A formal notice that, per the trigger clause in the licensing agreement, Mr. Ethan Cole had unilaterally terminated all authorization for the use of the Phoenix Project. A demand that Vance Dynamics immediately cease all commercial use of the Phoenix Project to avoid a patent infringement lawsuit. Attached were copies of the patent certificates for every core technology of the Phoenix Project as evidence. The letter was a bomb that detonated inside the executive suite. When Isabella saw the patents she never knew existed, all bearing the name Ethan Cole, her world tilted on its axis. She had always assumed the Phoenix Project was a company asset, something she owned and controlled. It had never occurred to her that the crown jewel of her empire had never been hers to begin with. And now I was taking it back. Her head of legal, his face ashen, confirmed it all. The patents were ironclad and protected under international law. If they went to court, Vance Dynamics had a 0% chance of winning. Worse, because infringement was already occurring, the company was facing a lawsuit for damages that could climb into the billions. Isabella collapsed into her chair, her face a pale mask of shock. She finally understood what a formidable enemy she had made. She thought she had been in control, but from the very beginning, she had been a player in my game. Meanwhile, Brandon's grand plan to build a new system had hit a brick wall. He had arrogantly promised to deliver in a month, but after a week, he hadn't even managed to decipher the basic logic of the Phoenix Project's architecture. The Phoenix Project was my masterpiece, a fusion of cutting-edge distributed architecture, microservices, and AI algorithms that had cost me years of blood, sweat, and tears. Its complexity was a fortress he couldn't begin to scale. He and his hastily assembled team of mercenaries were like a band of cavemen trying to reverse engineer a starship. It was pathetic. Besieged from all sides, Isabella finally broke. My phone rang. It was her. This time, her voice was trembling with pure fear. "Ethan, we need to talk. Please. I'm begging you." I didn't hang up. I just said, "I gave you your chance. I know I was wrong. I was so wrong," she cried, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this to me? Did all our years together mean nothing to you?" "Mean something." I let out a cold laugh. "Isabella, you want to talk about our relationship now? Where was that sentiment when you threw me out like trash for your old flame? Where was it when Brandon told me to my face that I was just a stand-in?" I heard her sharp intake of breath on the other end. What did he tell you?" "It doesn't matter anymore," I said, cutting her off. "Isabella, once the arrow leaves the bow, you can't call it back. The game has started, and I'm the one dealing the cards." I hung up and immediately instructed my lawyers to leak the story of Vance Dynamics' patent infringement to several major financial news outlets. At the same time, I had the new HR department at Phoenix Innovations start officially extending offers to the engineers who had walked out with me. The salary package was a 30% raise across the board on their previous compensation. I also instituted a generous employee stock ownership plan. Every single founding member was getting a piece of the company they were building. The news lit up our private group chat. Morale, which had been wavering, soared. All the resentment they had bottled up under Isabella and Brandon was now transformed into ferocious loyalty and motivation for our new venture. Everything was in place. All I needed was one final push. That push came the next day. As soon as the market opened, Vance Dynamics stock went into a nosedive. Core tech team walks out in mass resignation. Patent dispute plunges a publicly traded company into chaos. CEO's old flame at center of corporate meltdown. The headlines, a mix of fact and speculation, spread like wildfire online. Investors panicked and started dumping their shares. In a single morning, the stock plummeted by 30%, wiping out nearly $3 billion in market value. And that was just the beginning. That afternoon, Phoenix Innovations held its first official press conference. For the first time, I, Ethan Cole, stood before the world as the founder and CEO of Phoenix Innovations and the sole patent holder of the Phoenix Project. Facing a sea of cameras and reporters, I felt no nerves at all. I laid out the technological superiority of the Phoenix Project, displayed the patent documentation, and explained my vision for Phoenix Innovations, a company dedicated to creating truly groundbreaking proprietary technology. I never mentioned Vance Dynamics by name. I never said a single bad word about Isabella. I didn't have to. My presence, my new title, and the very existence of my company was a fatal blow. Everyone in that room, and everyone watching, understood the truth. Vance Dynamics was finished. It was a hollowed-out shell, destined to sink. One sharp reporter asked, "Mr. Cole, as the former CTO of Vance Dynamics, isn't launching a new company with the same core technology a violation of a non-compete agreement and a form of intellectual property theft?" It was the exact question I wanted. I smiled at the reporter. First, I never signed a non-compete agreement with my former employer. Second, regarding intellectual property, let me be very clear. The Phoenix Project has always been my personal property. I licensed it for use, and now I have simply revoked that license. That is a world away from theft. As for why I left, my voice shifted, a hint of calculated sorrow creeping in. Let's just say we had different values. A company that no longer respects technology and no longer respects the people who create it is not a place I am willing to dedicate my life to. My answer was airtight. It established my legal and moral high ground. After the press conference, public opinion swung decisively in my favor. I was cast as the brilliant, betrayed founder, a hero of innovation cast out by heartless corporate greed. Isabella was painted as a villain, a manipulative, backstabbing executive who put personal feelings before her company and her people. That afternoon, trading of Vance Dynamics stock was halted after it hit its circuit breaker, limit down. The company's phone lines were overwhelmed. Investors demanded their money back. Partners terminated their contracts, and the remaining employees descended into chaos. Isabella and Richard used every connection they had to try and control the narrative to issue denials and clarifications. But faced with the hard, undeniable facts, their efforts were utterly futile. That evening, I got a text from Isabella. It was only 3 words. "I give up." It was followed by an address. "Our old home. Come talk. One last time." I knew this was her final, desperate move. It was time to put an end to this entire ridiculous saga. When I returned to the familiar apartment, Isabella was sitting alone on the living room sofa. The lights were off. The sprawling city lights outside, the massive windows cast a lonely silhouette of her figure. She was wearing a simple silk robe, her long hair unkempt, her face free of makeup, revealing a deep, weary exhaustion. The glamorous, untouchable CEO was gone. In her place was a woman who looked like a butterfly caught in a storm, fragile and broken. She heard the door open and slowly looked up. Her once vibrant eyes were bloodshot and filled with a desolate emptiness. "You're here," she said, her voice raspy. I sat on the sofa opposite her, the cold coffee table a barrier between us. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked. She looked at me, her expression a storm of regret, resentment, and something else I couldn't decipher. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you have to take it this far? Do you hate me that much?" "Hate you?" I let out a small, humorless laugh and shook my head. "No, Isabella, I don't hate you. I just feel like a fool. I gave everything I had to you, to this company. I thought we were partners, building a dream together. I thought we were in love. But in the end, I was just a tool to you. A placeholder you could cast aside the second the real thing came along." "That's not true." She started, her voice desperate. "I never thought of you like that." "Didn't you?" I cut her off, pulling out my phone and pressing play. Brandon's smug, condescending voice filled the silent living room. "She never loved you. The only reason she chose you was because of your name. Ethan." Every time she said Ethan, it felt like she was saying my name, Brandon. The blood drained from Isabella's face. She swayed, nearly falling off the sofa. How could he tell me the truth?" I pocketed my phone, my gaze like ice. "Now, Isabella, tell me again how I've gone too far." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There are no defenses against the truth. A long, heavy silence stretched between us. Finally, she looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I was a fool, and I destroyed everything. Please, just give me one more chance." She stood up and walked around the table, reaching for my hand as she used to. I shifted slightly, and her hand fell into empty space. She froze. "It's too late," I said, my voice flat. "Isabella, there's no going back. I'll get rid of Brandon. I'll give you the company. I'll give you anything," she sobbed, sinking to her knees in front of me. "Just come back. Just help me. I'll do whatever you want." The proud, imperious Isabella Vance was now begging at my feet. Looking at her tear-streaked face, I felt nothing. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the hurt had numbed me long ago. When trust is annihilated, all that's left is wreckage. "I don't need your company, and I don't need your charity," I said, standing up to look down on her. "I just need you to follow through on what I asked." "What?" "The apology, the press conference, and then the divorce." I paused. "Oh, and one more thing. I want you to be the one to put Brandon North in prison." Isabella's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you talking about? Did you really think I didn't know?" I said coldly. "In his desperation to crack the Phoenix Project, Brandon hired hackers to attack my servers and steal the source code. My lawyers have all the evidence. It's corporate espionage. The damages are in the millions. It's more than enough to send him away for a very long time. So you have a choice. You can turn him in, save what's left of your company, and show some semblance of integrity. Or you can protect him and let Vance Dynamics burn to the ground with him. It's up to you." Isabella began to shake violently. On one side, the man she had idealized for a decade. On the other, the company that was her entire life's work. I had given her the cruelest possible choice. She looked at me with terror and despair, as if I were a demon she had summoned from the depths of hell. "Ethan, you're ruthless." I smiled. "I learned from the best, Ms. Vance." In the end, Isabella chose her company. Perhaps that perfect, idealized love she held onto for a decade couldn't withstand the threat of absolute ruin. Or maybe she still held onto one last, desperate fantasy, that if she could just save the company, she could somehow save us, too. 3 days later, Vance Dynamics held another press conference. Isabella stood at the podium, gaunt and hollow-eyed. She looked into the cameras and bowed deeply. As I had demanded, she confessed to her catastrophic leadership failures and issued a public apology to me and the entire team that had left. She admitted that the intellectual property for the Phoenix Project belonged to me and that the company had been operating illegally. And then she dropped the final bombshell. She announced that the former director of technology, Brandon North, was under police investigation for suspected corporate espionage, and that the company was cooperating fully with the authorities. The room erupted. It wasn't a PR event. It was a public confession and an execution. Isabella had, with her own hands, nailed both herself and her long-lost love to the cross. The news broke just as Brandon was attempting to flee the country. He was arrested at the airport. He was now facing the full force of the law. Vance Dynamics stock, which had been temporarily unfrozen, was immediately halted again as it cratered. The board was furious. The investors were in an uproar, and Richard Vance reportedly suffered stroke. Isabella was removed as CEO in an emergency board meeting. She was out. The queen of a corporate empire had been dethroned. And from the day Brandon North returned to the day it all came crashing down, less than 2 weeks had passed. After handling the fallout, Isabella asked to meet me at City Hall. She was wearing a simple white dress, the same one she wore on our first date. She looked even more fragile than at the press conference, but also calmer. "I've signed the papers," she said, handing me a folder. "I'm giving you all the marital assets. I'm walking away with nothing." I glanced at the documents. "No, we'll stick to the original plan. You keep the assets. I'll walk away with nothing." Our original agreement was a simple 50-50 split of communal property. But the penthouse, the luxury cars, those were all things she had purchased before our marriage. My walking away with nothing was simply me taking what was mine and foregoing my claim on our shared savings and investments. Her offer was to give me everything, including her premarital assets. She looked at me, her eyes welling up. "Please, just take it. As compensation." "I don't need it," I said, pushing the folder back. Isabella, I didn't do any of this for your money. She fell silent. We walked into the courthouse together, two strangers who knew everything about each other. The process was quick. In less than 10 minutes, our marriage license was replaced by divorce decrees. As we stepped back outside, the sunlight was blinding. I felt a profound sense of release, as if a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Ethan, Isabella said quietly, stopping me. I turned back. She looked at me with a desperate, pleading hope in her eyes. Is there any chance for us? I can wait. I'll wait for you to stop being angry, for you to forgive me. I looked at her face, the face I was once obsessed with, and felt nothing. Isabella, I said calmly, do you know why Phoenix is called a phoenix? She looked confused. Because it's reborn from the ashes. It rises and flies toward a new sky. It doesn't turn back to sift through the cinders of its past. Without another glance, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I could hear the sound of her choked, hopeless sobs. I didn't look back, not even once. Life after the divorce was quiet and intensely busy. Phoenix Innovations was on a rocket ship. With the core team from Advanced Dynamics, we hit the ground running. Many of our old clients, having learned the truth, switched their contracts over to us. They needed reliable technology, and my team was the gold standard. I promoted Pops Riley to CTO, and he led the team with renewed vigor, optimizing our systems and developing new products around the clock. In just 3 months, we launched a new enterprise-level SaaS platform that blew the old Phoenix project out of the water. Phoenix Innovations became an overnight sensation. Venture capitalists swarmed, but I turned most of them down, choosing to partner with a top-tier firm that truly understood our technology and vision. The valuation of our seed round set a new industry record. I, Ethan Cole, went from a discarded CTO to the hottest rising star in the tech world. Meanwhile, Advanced Dynamics was sinking. Without its core technology, its team, or the trust of its clients, the former multi-billion-dollar giant collapsed. The stock price fell from over $100 a share to less than $5, teetering on the edge of being delisted. The board brought in new investors to salvage what they could. The Vance family was forced to sell their controlling stake for pennies on the dollar to avoid complete ruin. Isabella was completely wiped out. She had lost everything. Her company, her reputation, her fortune. I heard she sold the penthouse and moved into a small apartment. Someone saw her crying alone at a bus stop late one night. Richard Vance never recovered from his stroke, and the once powerful Vance family faded into obscurity. When I heard the news, I was in our new office, popping champagne with my team to celebrate our 1 millionth user. The bubbles sparkled under the lights, the room filled with laughter and excitement. I felt no pleasure in her downfall, no pity, just a quiet sense of finality. They made their choices. They reaped the consequences. I had simply taken back what was mine and made them pay the price for their betrayal. That was enough. 1 year later, I was backstage, adjusting my tie before giving the keynote at our Series B funding announcement. My assistant, Chloe, the same one who had followed me from the beginning, walked over with a folder. "Everything's ready, Ethan," she said, her eyes shining with admiration. I smiled, taking the folder. "Thanks, Chloe. I couldn't have done it without you." Over the past year, she had become my indispensable right hand, and a quiet, unspoken affection had grown between us. But I wasn't ready for a new relationship. Not yet. Just then, a stagehand rushed in. "Mr. Cole, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Isabella Vance." My hand tightened on the folder. Isabella, a name I hadn't thought about in months. I frowned. "Tell her I'm busy. I can't see her. She said it's urgent, that she has to see you," the man said, looking uncomfortable. I thought for a moment, then sighed. "Fine. Tell her to wait in the green room. I'll be there after the presentation." Some things, it seemed, needed a final, definitive end. The event was a massive success. Phoenix Innovations was now valued at more than Advanced Dynamics had been at its peak. The press was calling me a visionary, a prodigy. After shaking the last hand, I went to the green room. Isabella was standing with her back to me, looking out the window. She was wearing old, faded clothes. She was rail-thin, her hair dull and lifeless. The confident, powerful woman I once knew was completely gone. She turned when I entered. I was startled by her appearance. Her face was etched with hardship, her eyes hollow, as if her soul had been scooped out. "You came," she said, trying to smile. It was a ghastly sight. "What do you want, Isabella?" My voice was neutral. She reached into a worn cloth bag and pulled out a stock transfer agreement, placing it on the table. This is the last of my Vance Dynamic stock," she said, her voice a tiny whisper. I want to give it to you." I glanced at the paper. The shares were effectively worthless. "What?" I asked. She looked up, and for a second, a flicker of light appeared in her dead eyes. A mixture of shame, pain, and humility. "Ethan, I know I can never repay you for what I did. My father, he's paralyzed. Brandon got 10 years in prison. The company is gone. My family is broken. I have nightmares every single night. I see you walking away. I see the company collapsing. I hear everyone cursing my name." Tears began to slide silently down her cheeks. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I spend every day thinking about it. If I hadn't done what I did, would things be different? I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just wanted to give this back to you. I know it's worthless, but it should have been yours from the start. Consider it my final apology. She gave me one last look, an agonizing mix of desperate love and infinite regret. Then she turned and stumbled towards the door, a frail, lonely, pathetic figure. Just as her hand reached the doorknob, I spoke. "Stop." Her body went rigid. I picked up the agreement, walked over to her, and, looking her right in the eye, tore it into pieces. I dropped the confetti of paper into a nearby trash can. The light in her eyes died completely. She thought I was rejecting even her pitiful attempt at penance. I looked at her, my voice calm, but absolute. "Isabella, the past is over. I don't hate you, and I don't love you. To me, you're just a name now. Your apology, your regret. That's your burden to carry, not mine. I want you to leave. Don't ever contact me again. Your life is your own. Whether it's good or bad from now on has nothing to do with me. Goodbye." I opened the door and stepped out. Outside was a bright hallway and the team that was waiting to build the future with me. Inside was the dark, collapsed world she now inhabited alone. I didn't look back. I walked into the light, feeling the warmth on my face. A new era, my era, had truly begun.